They laughed. They whispered. And one person watched without interrupting. The auditorium smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Folding chairs filled the space in neat rows, each one occupied by a parent who had come for the quarterly school meeting. Voices overlapped, small talk, complaints, polite nods between people who knew each other only through their children. At the front of the room stood Emily Harper, a middle school teacher with tired eyes and a careful smile. Emily adjusted the papers in her hands and waited for the murmurs to die down. They didn't. She had been teaching for 14 years, long enough to know when a room was listening and when it wasn't. Tonight, it wasn't. It started with a question. A father in the second row raised his hand, not waiting to be called on. "Why are test scores lower this semester?" he asked. His tone was sharp, impatient. Emily took a breath. "We've had several students dealing with housing instability," she said calmly. "We're adjusting." Another voice cut in. "So you're making excuses?" A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Emily felt her cheeks warm. She smiled anyway. She always smiled. "I'm explaining context," she replied. "Every child learns differently." "Or maybe," a woman near the aisle said loudly, "the teaching just isn't good enough." More laughter, louder this time. Emily glanced toward the principal seated near the wall. He avoided her eyes. She turned back to the parents. "I welcome feedback," she said, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. "But I ask that we keep this respectful." The man from the second row scoffed. "Respect is earned." Someone clapped. A few people joined in. Emily froze for half a second, just long enough for the moment to sink in. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a performance, and she was the target. Near the back of the room sat Daniel Cross. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't whispered. He had simply watched. Daniel sat with his hands folded, eyes fixed on Emily as the room slowly turned cruel. He noticed the way her shoulders stiffened, the way she kept nodding as if accepting blame that didn't belong to her. Daniel knew that look. He'd seen it on nurses blamed for system failures, on junior employees used as shields for poor leadership, and he'd seen it once before, years ago, on his own sister. Emily continued answering questions, each one sharper than the last. Why didn't she control the class better? Why did some students complain she was too soft? Why hadn't she done more? Each question chipped away at her. What they didn't see were the mornings she arrived early to tutor struggling students, the lunches she skipped to meet with counselors, the notebooks she bought with her own money because the school budget ran dry in October. They didn't see the letters she kept in a drawer, thank you notes from students who finally believed they weren't stupid. They saw only a moment, and they decided it defined her. People noticed the cruelty, but no one interrupted. Some avoided eye contact. Some checked their phones. Some convinced themselves it wasn't their place, because speaking up meant standing out, and silence felt safer. The principal cleared his throat at last. "Let's move on," he said weakly. The room shifted, conversation drifting elsewhere as if nothing had happened. Emily gathered her papers with hands that trembled just enough to notice. She forced another smile. "Thank you for your time," she said. A few parents nodded. Others didn't bother looking up. Daniel remained seated, watching. The auditorium emptied slowly. Emily stayed behind, stacking chairs with mechanical movements. Her smile had disappeared now. In its place was something quieter, exhaustion mixed with shame she didn't deserve. Daniel approached. "You handled that with more grace than they earned," he said gently. Emily startled slightly, then nodded. Thank you. Daniel hesitated. I didn't speak up. Emily looked at him, surprised by the honesty. That doesn't make you responsible, she said softly. Most people didn't. Daniel swallowed. It does make me accountable. Daniel wasn't just a parent. He chaired the district's Independent Education Review Board, an unpaid position he'd taken quietly after retiring from public service. He believed in watching first, understanding systems before trying to change them. What he'd seen tonight troubled him deeply. May I ask something? Daniel said. Emily nodded. Has this happened before? Emily's silence answered him. 2 weeks later, emails circulated. An inquiry was announced. Anonymous feedback from multiple teachers surfaced. Patterns emerged: public blame, lack of administrative support. Parents encouraged to vent instead of collaborate. Daniel had submitted a formal report. Not dramatic, not emotional, just thorough and undeniable. The principal was reassigned. New policies were implemented for parent meetings. Clear guidelines, moderators. Zero tolerance for public harassment. Emily was asked to join a curriculum advisory group, her insight finally recognized. She almost said no. Then she remembered the students who needed her to stay. At the next meeting, the man from the second row approached her. I didn't realize, he muttered. I was frustrated. Emily nodded politely. I hope your child is doing well, she said. She didn't offer forgiveness. She didn't need to. Daniel sat in the back again. This time, when a voice rose too sharply, he spoke. Let's keep this constructive, he said calmly. The room listened. Emily met his eyes and smiled, not the careful one from before, but a real one. Humiliation doesn't always end with applause. Sometimes it ends with silence. But silence is remembered, and so is truth. Because even when no one interrupts, someone is always watching.